there, sweet peas. Today I'm going to be talking about the shadow stuff that has been materializing as a result of the global pandemic that we're living through. And I'm hoping that this is going to include advice and some comfort for some people, maybe some empathy for some people, but please do also be aware that it might get a little bit ranty, because I also am living through this global pandemic. I also am living through these collective shadows. I also am bearing witness to some of these things, and they are bothering me. And so just on an individual level, I think I want to make this video for me and to record how I'm feeling about things and to record the perceptions that I'm having of some of the things that I'm seeing as well. So I do think it's going to be an opportunity for me, you know, to vent, to get into my feelings a little bit about stuff. It's really nice for me to have a long opportunity to be able to talk to you about some of the things that I'm witnessing and how I feel about those things, but I'm not going to be upset or offended at all if this is not your jam and if you find that it's really not helping you and you want to switch off, or, you know, it's fine, because I think everybody copes with these things differently, and that's part of what I want to talk about in the video today. One of the things that obviously we're seeing happening on a big collective level right now is something that I think a lot of us have either engaged in ourselves on a more micro level or been victims of on a micro level. And maybe for a lot of us, it's both. We have both perpetrated it and we've also been victims of it. And that is toxic positivity. And that's going to be the first thing that I want to talk about today, because of course, I'm seeing a lot of it. I'm seeing a lot of it in the online sphere. I'm seeing a lot of it in kind of like the wellness world and the spirituality world. Of course, it's also happening within families, within friendship groups, when you're talking to people about what's going on, what you're afraid of, etc. You might find that you come across at least one person who is practicing some form of toxic positivity and is trying to kind of convince you to get on the toxic positivity gravy train. Toxic positivity is essentially the insistence upon other people's performance of positivity. It's basically this big overgeneralization of things as generally being happy or optimistic or not as bad as they may otherwise appear. And when somebody in your midst is kind of bombarding you with toxic positivity, they're usually saying things like, it will all be okay in the end, you really shouldn't worry so much, let's look on the bright side of things. And this very much tends to minimize and invalidate people's often very legitimate fears and concerns. And it stamps out any ability for people to have a sense that they can talk about the spectrum of their feelings. So you might sometimes feel quite positive, quite optimistic. You might have moments of hope or elation. You might actually have moments where you can really enjoy certain aspects of what is happening to you during this time, or what is going on with your world during this time. But you might have other moments where there is despair, there is helplessness, there's fear. Maybe you're worried about other people for whom those feelings are very prevalent. So if you're in the midst of a person who is bombarding you with toxic positivity, they're basically insisting that you cut out those areas of feeling and concern that are uncomfortable really for the person who's shilling the toxic positivity. It's really about that person not being able to deal perhaps with the more shadowy elements of what is going on. And sometimes also people who are very sort of forceful with toxic positivity, they are the people who think they are really being very helpful by trying to convince everybody to get onto the happiness and optimism gravy train. But actually, a lot of the time, people want to talk about the fullness of their experience. So as you're listening to this, you might be thinking, oh, okay, I'm somebody who's actually trying to push toxic positivity. Or you might be one of those people who is the victim of somebody's toxic positivity, or you are at the very least feeling as though you are seeing a lot of toxic positivity in your online sphere, and you might be feeling like you need to pull away from it in some sense. You either need to stop pushing it or you need to stop being in receipt of it. And I think that's a very valid and legitimate thing to do in our, you know, collective COVID-19 shadow work, if you will, because toxic positivity is something that can be so damaging anyway when we're looking at just our individual personal situations. But when we're looking at something that involves basically everybody and most people are in some way affected by it, toxic positivity can really stunt conversation and stop people from being in the fullness of their experience. And they might therefore feel shamed into taking the negative aspects of what they're feeling into themselves. And we all know how that can go. That can be very dangerous. It can lead to suicidal ideation, it can lead to self-harm, it can lead to just really low moods and just really, isolating yourself away from people in terms of like conversationally isolating. Of course, we should be isolating if you're watching this at the time of upload, but conversationally isolating, pulling away, feeling ashamed because we are not constantly positive. So I think that's something we can be shadow working within ourselves, and we can also recognize when somebody else is coming at things with this toxic positive lens, and we can make sure that we do not feel shamed or policed by that toxic positive lens. Sometimes we can invite somebody who is engaging in toxic positivity to have a more real and raw conversation. And sometimes you might find that you're in a situation where that's just going to antagonize a person, and really you just need to decrease the amount of time that you spend in conversation with that person, because they feel that the toxic positivity is part of their coping mechanism, their setup. And I'm not saying that somebody who is feeling very optimistic at this time, very hopeful, very happy, is engaging in toxic positivity. It might be very real for them that they feel positive or hopeful or happy. The problem is more when they expect everybody else around them to be the same, or they kind of have this message that they put across that the only way to deal with this suitably or healthily is to be as upbeat as they are and as positive as they are, and that might really not be working for you, and it might not really be healthy for you. I think we can all definitely afford to have a look at what it is that we are ingesting online. I know that a lot of you, if you're watching this video, you're probably also taking in a lot of information from, the health and wellness arena, spirituality, just different things like that, self-help, personal development, inner growth, and I think we can afford to be having a look at what we are ingesting in those arenas and say, okay, this is actually not helpful for me. It's something that is not necessarily positive. Now, if I happen to be one of the voices that is not positive for you and you're feeling like you're not getting anything from it, fully just do not watch my content about it. Do not engage with what I'm saying and where I'm coming from. I think it's different for everybody, and I'm not saying that there's necessarily any right or wrong. You're going to find what works for you, what strengthens you, and that's part of the work that you have to do during a time like this, is to figure out what your materials are. You've got to choose your weapons, as it were. One of the forms of shadow work that it can be really difficult to do, I think, during a collective crisis like this, is to figure out the balance between the difficult things you're feeling, the negative things that you're feeling, the fear, the panic, the uncertainty, the sadness, the overwhelm, and then, how you're going to do your mindset shifts and look at things in a more empowering way and decide where is your agency and where can you take action. Because I think there's definitely got to be a harmony between those two things, right? So we can't afford to just scrub out all of the painful things we're feeling. We can't afford to ignore those emotions, but neither can we afford to live in the other direction where we're in this swamp of negativity all the time. We're not allowing ourselves to be empowered when we're not figuring out what the next action needs to be. If there's somebody in your life who is being super, super negative during this situation, they're not empowering themselves, they're not thinking about where their agency lies, they're feeling very nervous about things, they're feeling very they're expressing negative emotion all the time. Instead of pasting over and plastering over their experience and kind of trampling their emotions by saying things like, it will all be okay in the end, you've got to find your power, and, addressing it that way, probably one of the best things to do is just to acknowledge that what they are feeling is valid, but then suggest like, okay, but what is the next thing to be doing? So, for me, instead of saying everything happens for a reason or everything's going to be okay in the end or whatever, I think it's much more helpful to say, I know things are really tough right now, honey, and I know that this is a really difficult time, but let's think about where your agency is right now, or let's think about something great that we can do today, or, let's talk about this thing that usually really uplifts you. So you're not trampling over that person's difficult emotional experience, but what you are saying is, okay, that's real and that's valid, and obviously you're feeling that way, but let's not drop anchor there. Let's see what else we can bring in that's going to help or is going to empower you. Obviously, it's not helpful to ceaselessly wallow in your negative feelings about this. It's also not helpful to ceaselessly brush all the negativity under the rug and insist that everybody feels okay. So if you're in a situation where you're dealing with somebody who's wanting you to deal with this in a very toxic, positive way, they're insisting that you are always upbeat, you're always optimistic, maybe you can say to them, depending on the nature of your relationship, hey, you know what, it would be much better if you would acknowledge my feelings that I'm having, my traumal feelings, my anxious feelings. I appreciate that you want to do something for me that you feel is empowering, or you want me to feel a certain way that you think would be better for me, but it's really difficult for me when you brush my feelings under the rug in order to do that. And you don't need to do that. We can have a real honest conversation about the breadth of our emotions, and maybe you need to do that as well, you know, because very often a toxic positive person does need to feel and experience the breadth and range of their emotions, and they're not allowing themselves to do that, and therefore it feels very scary when somebody else starts doing that. One aspect of toxic positivity that I think is very, very prevalent right now, and I mentioned this in my last COVID-19 related video, which I'll leave down below if you haven't seen it, is the urge towards this idea that you should complete your masterpiece during lockdown. You should be working out, you should be, you know, getting that body you've always wanted, reading all the books that have been on your to be read pile for ages, or otherwise doing something very productive. And there's this meme that's going around online, and I know some of you are going to be groaning because you're going to be like, yeah, I've seen it, I hate it, but the meme says something like, if you don't come out of this experience having mastered a language, done a painting, started a side hustle, then it wasn't time that you lacked, it was discipline. And that is just really a promotion of self-hate. Now, is it true that it might be very useful for some people? Is it true that that particular quote might be really inspiring for some people? Absolutely. But I think what would be great is if they would take that and they would allow themselves to be inspired by it, but not share it on their social media platforms, because for other people it can be so shaming, and it can really make them feel like, oh my God, I need to make this time work for me, and I need to be on my A game. And let's be honest, how many people are really going to be on their fucking A game during a global pandemic? Let's be real, honey bunnies. How many people are going to be on their A game during a time like this? It's a weird, wonky time in the human story. And a lot of us are not going to be on our A game. I'm not on mine, okay? I'm just going to be real. I'm not on mine either. Oh my God. So that meme is just like, I read it and I see it doing the rounds, and I know people are trying to be helpful, but it makes me worry about how it's going to make people feel that they should be responding. And so I want to reassure you now that there's no need for you to be responding in that manner. Lockdown is going to be different for everybody. And also, I think one shadow that I'm seeing a lot as well is the shadow of assuming that everybody's life is exactly like yours. So because somebody has access to certain facilities, they're adopting a certain mindset, they assume other people have the same access to those facilities or that money or that mindset. And one of the big things about this is the assumption that because one person and the majority of people that they know are on lockdown, it means everybody's on lockdown. You know, there's so much talk about, like, while you're on lockdown, this and this and this, you should feel this way, you should be doing this thing, we should be focusing on this. And very little attention is paid to the fact that not everybody on your Facebook feed, or not everybody who reads your social media posts, not everybody in your friendship group or your group WhatsApp thread that you have is going to be on lockdown. Some people are not on lockdown. They're working really tough, long hours in very scary conditions, and it's stressful, and they're not making any more money than they ordinarily would be, and their future is uncertain and they are afraid. You know, and there are lots of people who are on lockdown with 80% of their pay or full pay from their company, and other people who are on lockdown but they've been laid off from an already low paying job where they didn't have any savings. So there's a lot of people talking very broadly about how everybody should be doing things. And the shadow of that is that there's such a lack of empathy in it. There's such a lack of awareness in it for the fact that people are in very different situations. Not everybody is going to be where you are. And just because not everybody is where you are does not mean that they're never going to be. So for instance, I've seen quite a few things online where people have said, this is the moment in our history as a collective, as humanity, where we need to be talking about how things need to change. And we need to be having these really invested dialogues about how we're going to be a part of that change and what that's going to look like. And I've seen a few people in both my personal and my professional realm saying things like, it's frustrating that not enough people want to have this conversation about how we need, you know, fundamental shifts to our reality, and how COVID-19 has proven this. I'm not denying that. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that I haven't myself felt that way, but maybe now is not the time that people feel that they are ready to have those kinds of conversations. We have to be patient. We have to realize that we're still in the middle of this thing right now. We have no idea even actually if we're in the middle. In the middle is the wrong thing to say. It's like we don't really know at the moment what is going on in terms of timelines, and we are trying to do everything that we can to preserve our emotional well-being, focus on our mental health, make sure that we are being as functional as we possibly can be for our personal situation. So if you feel like you are ready to start the fucking revolution and your insurrectionist archetype has risen up and you feel very mobilized and very galvanized and very like, oh yes, try not to shame other people who are not feeling that way, who are feeling like they can't even have a conversation at the moment about what the fuck they want to have for breakfast, let alone what they want the world to look like after COVID-19. You know, it's not the right time for everybody. And, you know, obviously vice versa, if you've got a big energy around you of people having conversations, mobilizing and figuring out how they want to switch things up afterwards, but you don't feel the same way, it's okay to say, you know what, I don't feel like I can have those conversations right now. It's great that you can, but that's not where my mind is, and that's not what my emotional well-being can handle. A lot of us are going to be doing a lot of shadow work around not being the best version of ourselves, forgiving ourselves for that, and also forgiving others and releasing whatever feelings we might have about the fact that they also at the moment are not capable of perhaps being the best version of themselves. There are going to be so many situations where you recognize why somebody is behaving maybe out of character, maybe in a way that is distinctly dysfunctional or unhelpful, unhealthy. And you are going to breathe and forgive and release and try to understand and show compassion. And all of that is so wonderful. And I think it's why a lot of us do the spiritual work that we do, so that we can be prepared for the real world situations where we need to do that. In other cases, however, if you see a pattern of behavior that is harmful towards you, or if you feel like you do need to defend your boundaries, you do need to uphold your limitations, you do need to feel like it's possible for you to do that. You might do it in a way that is different to how you would normally do it, depending on the situation, for sure. But I want to kind of reassure people that yes, there's going to be times where you require understanding, forgiveness, and compassion from others, because you're dealing with feelings that are making it hard for you to approach situations the way you ordinarily would. And you want someone to actually empathize with that. And there are going to be situations where you have to give the same. However, that doesn't mean you need to put up with like ongoing bullshit, nonsense, bullying, overstepping of your boundaries, trampling of your emotional needs, somebody that's not willing to listen to what it is that you are saying that you require in order for your emotional well-being. You know, obviously, I think it's important for you to give yourself still permission, just as much permission as you did pre-COVID-19. And if you weren't giving yourself enough permission pre-COVID-19, then now's as good a time as any, darling, to really let yourself hold your boundaries firm if that's what's needed. Sometimes people don't know how they're behaving. They don't see how they're behaving. They sometimes might just need it pointed out to them. Some people are better in a crisis than other people are better in a crisis. And there's a lot of things that you can come to understand, I think, during this sort of collective crisis about crisis management and about how people respond to things like this coming out of nowhere. And I say coming out of nowhere, like I've known for the longest time that we are statistically overdue a global pandemic, but even so I feel it's come out of nowhere because, you know, I could never have predicted it was going to happen right now. I could never have predicted I was going to be in this place in my life. I could never have predicted I was going to be in Amsterdam on lockdown in a different country. So, you know, we recognize, don't we, in each other where the hardships are in terms of dealing with crises. And you might be someone that's not as good at it. You might be somebody who's better at it. You might be somebody who needs to give some ground. You might be somebody who very much needs to take some ground that is hopefully being lovingly given by people in your life. One collective shadow that I think has become very prevalent during the COVID-19 crisis is the shadow of spreading misinformation. Obviously, I'm going to say during the course of this video, please, on no level, be a part of it. Don't let yourself be a part of it. Don't spread misinformation. Don't give advice that is not based upon expert advice that you have read from credible sources. Don't listen to what somebody says online and then just take it as gospel and then self-righteously insist that somebody else follow that information when it's not even the right information. All of this is very shadowy, and it has a lot of its basis in fear-mongering, social control, and I think also the enjoyment of self-righteousness, of demanding almost that somebody take on instructions that are not even expert instructions. They're not even anything that, anybody with any scientific background in this, anybody with any education in this has said. They are things that are going around online or going around in a family circle or a friendship group, and they're being repeated as gospel. And I think the way in which they're being repeated often has a certain tone to it. And the tone is very shaming, and the tone is very kind of like, in England we call it hoity-toity. I'm not actually sure what the origin of hoity-toity is, so let me look that up in case it's got some dodgy origin, because a lot of the things we say in the English language have all kinds of fucking dodgy origin, so I might have to cut that out, but depending on what it means, but very sort of like, oh, I'm above you and I know what's what and I'm going to come in and lord it up over you. And a lot of it is based on nothing. It's based on nothing that any credible expert has said. And again, a lot of it is to do with fear mongering, it's to do with social control, it's to do with attempting to glean control over other groups of people or other individuals. And we need to look into ourselves for whereabouts we are seeking power. Obviously, at the moment, we feel deprived of power. There is definitely, we feel collectively, a deficit of power right now, okay? And I think that sometimes people look for their sense of power and control in the way that they domineeringly instruct others to do things that are not even in alignment with any credible information. Another thing is, we do need to remember that the rules are different in different countries and different states. Now, to me, I think expertise is way more important than authority. And so what I want to do is follow the expertise. I'm not as interested in what the authorities say it's okay to do. I want to follow the expertise, right? So I know at the moment in the US, for example, that from state to state, things are very different in terms of what the authorities are allowing. There are certain states where authorities are allowing groups of up to 10 from different households to mix in social situations, in homes and stuff, which I think is wild. I do not think that's obviously not in keeping with what the experts are saying, as far as I'm fucking aware. Please correct me down below if you feel I'm wrong. But what most countries are doing and how most countries are operating right now is that you isolate with people in your household and you do not mix with people who are not in your household. And so obviously there are different things that different authorities are saying. I understand that can be very frustrating, because if you're following expert advice, then you want all of the authorities in different countries and different states to also be following that expert advice. And when they are not, and you see people doing things that you can't do or that you would not do because you know that the scientists are saying that it's not a good idea, then it can be very frustrating. I do get that, I do understand that, but I think tone has a lot to do with how much of a good result you can get out of something. So if you are genuinely worried about somebody and what they're doing, you're genuinely concerned for their welfare, you're genuinely concerned for the welfare of others, tone will help you get what you want as a result of the conversation you're trying to have. And if your tone is overwhelmingly one of somebody who is seeking empowerment by lording it up over others, you're not going to get the result that you desire. You're going to get a defensive result. I want to read something now that's come straight from the notes that I wrote while I was thinking about what I wanted to put into this video. I know I do this sometimes, but sometimes I feel like the way that I wrote something just basically nails it, so I just want to read it. It says, avoid spreading misinformation, of course. So I've already kind of went into that. Check your sources, use credible sources. Do not just reshare something or repeat something without knowing whether or not it's actually credible, especially not if you're doing it with a tone of extreme judgment towards whoever you're sharing it with, because they are not doing those things. If they're not doing those things because it's not from a credible source and experts haven't suggested it and you have plucked it out of the air or believe somebody else who said it, then you are the one who needs to take a back seat and avoid doing that. Avoid spreading misinformation. I've put here, if you would like to help people out by offering them information which has been suggested by experts in the appropriate fields, please consider the tone and language that you use and also share the appropriate links or the information, Consider the reason that you want to pass the information along. Maybe you're trying to be helpful and you're genuinely concerned. But maybe you've made some assumptions about the way in which someone else is acting during the pandemic, and maybe those assumptions are actually wrong. There is definitely a shadow that I have witnessed. I think a lot of people have witnessed it during this time of dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. And it is basically just this shadow around total lack of nuance and basically moral absolutism. This idea that everybody in every situation, in every set of circumstances, should be doing the exact same thing. And this idea that you have the right to judge what somebody else's life looks like or why they might be doing what they're doing. There's a post that's been doing the rounds lately that's gone viral. I'll leave it down below. And basically, I did share it. I reshared it on my Facebook page. Now, it's not exactly as I would actually have worded it. I don't think I would have chosen exactly this wording, but I did appreciate the sentiment, which is that we do need to be really careful that we are not foisting a lot of energetic judgment and maybe sometimes literal verbal judgment onto somebody whose situation we don't know or understand. And in the post, it says that if you see a guy in a hardware store and he's buying a can of paint, try to imagine for a second that he might be an alcoholic who's in recovery and fears that he needs to do something with his hands so that he can avoid lapsing into alcoholism. Now, I'm not being funny, but like where I am, most of the shops that are non-essential are closed and have been closed for quite some time now. The clothing stores, the art supply stores, they're all closed. I understand that there are different situations in different communities and different, like American states, for example, where there are a lot of non-essential stores that are still open. And I can understand how annoying that must be, how stressful that must be for people who are concerned with public safety. I do get that. On the other hand, though, I just want to say that a reminder that sometimes things are nuanced does not mean that I have a lack of concern for public safety. All it means is that I understand that there are different people that are going through different things at this time, and we need to be aware of when we are filling in the gaps with our own judgment of something and our own judgment of how something needs to be. So, for instance, there have been people that have been shopped to the police for apparently visiting socially somebody's home when they are not supposed to be visiting socially anybody else's home. They're supposed to be locked down in their own home. But what was actually happening was that they were leaving groceries in a hallway for elderly people or, compromised people who cannot go out and get their own groceries. And so they've been leaving them in the porch, for instance, or something like that. Maybe having a chat through a closed door to sort of accompany those people in some way that they can, and then leaving, and they have been shot to the authorities for that. What had to happen for somebody to call the police on that person delivering those groceries is that they had to fill in the gaps in their own mind. They decided in their own brain what was happening, and they decided that that person was flagrantly flaunting the rules. That's what they decided. That was their decision, right? And that actually wasn't what was really happening. And that person ended up having to deal with the authorities on top of the stress of having to deal with their own response to the COVID-19 crisis and the added stress of worrying about people who are compromised or who are elderly, whom they are looking after and taking groceries to, and potentially bearing the financial burden of that as well. You know, we are filling in a lot of gaps with our own assumptions about things, our assumptions of what could be happening in a particular situation. Now, I have a respect for nuance. That's just part of my personality. I have a respect for the fact that things may not be as they appear. And I have a respect for the fact that things are relative, dependent upon the circumstances and the situation. Do I have shadows that have come up since COVID-19? Absolutely. There are things I'm working through, definitely, that have been in shadow. And I'm going to talk about one of them later that I've definitely fallen into, a shadow hole, if you will, that I've definitely fallen into since the COVID-19 crisis started. But you know, I do have a lot of respect for the fact that when we look at something, we fill in a lot of gaps with our own assumptions, and sadly, our assumptions are often assumptions of wrongdoing, assumptions that somebody is being willfully ignorant, being willfully destructive, and actually, a lot of the time, that is not the case. Where I live, in my particular part of the UK, there was a video that went kind of viral of a guy that was very, very angry that a pub was open after there was instructions from the government to close non-essential businesses. There was a pub that appeared to be open, the front door of the pub was open, there were a couple of people standing at the bar inside the pub. This guy got so angry that he switched on his phone camera, he went into the pub, he started shouting the odds, he started screaming at the landlady who came round from behind the bar to try to explain what was going on and why the pub was open, but he was having none of it. He was screaming over her, he was shouting, and he said, if you don't close this pub, I'm going to come back and fucking close it myself, which is a threat of violence against property at the very least, if not also against fellow human beings. It later came out that the pub was not serving any booze. What they were doing was providing a takeaway service for elderly people who are regulars at the pub. One of the men standing at the bar was the son of one of the guys who's a regular at the pub who wanted to order a takeaway because he can't cook for himself, right? And he knows that the pub does good food, he likes their food, and the pub wanted to find a way to continue to make money while serving a lot of their elderly patrons. And it was being done in a socially distanced way. So there were markings on the floor to make sure people were a certain amount of, distance away from each other. That guy filmed that pub. He exposed that pub as flaunting the rules, but actually later on the owners of that pub said that they had a certificate from the police. They'd already spoken to the police force in the area, explained what they were doing. They asked if it was okay. The police said it was okay. They went round and they gave the pub a certificate to explain that they'd already had prior permission from the police force to operate the business in this socially distanced manner in order to serve elderly people who can't cook for themselves, right? So it was all basically the guy who went in and filmed this, he filled in a lot of gaps in his own brain, okay? And that is shadowy. That is a shadowy thing that we do as human beings. I'm not saying it's evil. I'm not saying this guy, deserves any huge punishment upon him for doing that. But that is what we are doing when we're looking at somebody. For instance, if you are standing behind somebody in the grocery store, socially distanced, standing behind somebody in the grocery store because you need to get food, and you see that as well as getting food, they have gotten some pens or some, an item of jewelry or whatever, and you are standing there and you're looking in their basket and you're fucking judging them and you're thinking, you aren't buying essential items, that's not an essential item, you're putting everybody else in danger, you're whatever, right? That is a lot of energy that you are expending on being very, very, very angry towards this individual who may really feel like they need some pens to do some drawings because they're isolating alone and they're going out of their fucking bird, right? They might feel like they wanted a piece of jewelry to cheer them up, to chirp them up during this difficult time. Maybe they have a lot going on that you don't know about. Maybe they had a lot going on before COVID that you didn't know about. Am I saying that I literally advocate for people all over the beach or all over the parks, having picnics, socializing with each other, flaunting the rules like that? No, I'm not saying I advocate for that. What I am saying is that there are a lot of mistakes being made. I know people are angry right now. I know people are stressed. But there are so many mistakes being made because of that anger and that stress and that pressure. You could be judging somebody who is literally having suicidal ideation and is needing to do what they are doing, whatever it is they are doing, because it's literally that or suicide. Just think, okay? That's all I'm asking for, is just a little bit of nuance, I saw somebody on the internet the other day saying that if they saw a mother out with their children at a time like this, they would scream at them. Don't scream at women with children, please, in the street, ever. Don't do that. You know what? There's a meme going around on the internet at the moment, another very sort of shadowy, I think, a shadowy meme. And it says, you need to switch your mindset from thinking that you are trapped in your home to remembering that you are safe in your home. That's the mindset shift that's got to happen. You might feel trapped, but actually you're much safer in your home. Again, this is a massive overlooking of the fact that not everybody is in the same situation. There are some people, particularly women, who are not safe right now in their home. They are trapped. They are trapped and they're struggling with intimate partner violence. Please try and remember that. Please try and get that if you don't, It's so hard sometimes when you see people just generalizing. They see themselves as being safe in their home, so they're frustrated that other people might not feel safe in theirs. Maybe that woman needs to take her children for a socially distanced walk. Maybe she doesn't have people at home she can leave her children with, if that's the issue. If the issue is just that you're angry because you think children aren't safe out there, or children aren't aware of social distancing and they might run up to somebody or whatever, Think for a second about the fact that that woman might not have anybody to take care of her children. She might be isolating alone. She might literally just be going to get a breather because she's afraid of somebody she lives with, and she's scared that things are going to boil over. There are other ways to die, all right? COVID-19 is not the only way people are dying right now. They're dying by their own hand. Domestic violence statistically is going up. The helplines are being used more. And if this is something that you are struggling with, if you are fearful that you're going to perpetrate it, if you are fearful that you're going to be the victim of it, if you have already been the victim of it, I'm going to leave information down below for you specifically. There's going to be a big part in the description that explains helplines and also offers articles on domestic partner violence during the time of COVID-19. I'm going to leave the articles down below for people who might need to just understand more about the effect that COVID-19 and lockdown is having on domestic violence and similar issues. Ableism is a huge problem at the moment. Ableism has been one of our collective shadows that's been very prevalent during COVID-19. And I have had to check myself on this, and I've also been the victim of this as well. I literally just yesterday was told not to use the elevator to go for exercise during COVID-19. Don't use the elevators, they're not safe. First of all, that is not what the experts are saying. The experts are advising social distancing, which means that, surprise, surprise, I don't get into the elevator when there are other people in there. But using the elevator is something that is like, it's not an option for me not to use the elevator. First of all, I'm on the 9th floor. Second of all, I have a spinal injury. So some of the things people advise, they think they're being, I don't know if they think they're being helpful. Like I said, I think there's sometimes a dose of a desire for power that comes out in people's advice giving, because it doesn't seem friendly, it doesn't seem loving, it doesn't come across that way in tone. But there is a lot of very helpful, very friendly advice giving, don't get me wrong, that's happening a lot during this time, and it's beautiful and it's lovingly given. But because somebody else is using the stairs in their apartment block, or maybe they don't live in an apartment block, maybe they live in a house on the ground floor, where they can just leave their home and they don't have to think about what it's like to take 9 sets of stairs, because they can't go there in their mind, or they can't imagine why somebody might not be able to use the stairs. They have given an instruction, and the way this comment was given was as an instruction. Don't use the elevators, they're not safe. You know what, like, again, it's really this shadow around everybody assuming that everyone else is in the same situation. Some people can't use the stairs. Some people can't use lots of sets of stairs. And so there is that ableism there. And another thing I want to say about ableism that's been quite shadowy, that I think we can all sort of, or a lot of us anyway, can afford to appreciate, is the dialogue around being bound to your home, the dialogue around social isolation. The dialogue around these things is largely being dominated, as usual, by people who have some kind of a platform, but have not really had to deal with social isolation and lockdown for very long. Actually, the main dialogue that's been taking place around things like social isolation, being bound to your home, that kind of thing, has been amongst people who are dealing with disabilities, who are dealing with chronic illnesses, who are dealing with injuries. Those are the people that have the best advice for you, because they've been dealing with it long before COVID-19 came along. They have been housebound. They have been struggling with getting out and about. They have had to turn down lots and lots and lots of social engagements that actually were going on. Never mind the pain of your social engagement being cancelled. There are loads of people that have chronic illnesses, that have had injuries, that are dealing with disabilities, who have had to cancel social engagement after social engagement. There are people that have been dealing with, like chronic, extreme mental health issues, who've already been having this dialogue. I think as much as we can, we need to raise up their voices specifically when it comes to things like talking about social isolation, dealing with lockdown, dealing with being housebound, all that kind of thing, rather than raise up voices who are only just experiencing this, but because they have a platform, they're getting more traction, they're getting more clicks, they're getting more appreciation. I think that also can be a shadow in our society, can't it? The shadow of forgetting that just because we are only just experiencing something perhaps, or we're only just really getting the fullness of how difficult something is, it means that everybody else is in the same boat and we're all only just going through it together. Actually, no, there are lots of people, perhaps even people in our lives whose plights we've been overlooking, or whose experiences we've been talking over or trampling over, who've been having these experiences for a long time and who have a lot of advice that they can give to us and a lot of help that they can give to us as we go through this, because they're better equipped. They have more experience in this area. If you are somebody who's already been dealing for a long time with the issues that COVID-19 has brought to the masses, then I want to say, I see you and I salute you and I commend the work you've already been doing. And I'm sorry if at any point you felt like I trampled over those experiences with anything I said in my videos, or with any assumptions that I made about what you were capable of doing or not doing. I apologize for that profusely. I will do better. Whenever we say things like, oh, it's not hard to do this, it's not hard to do that, why are people finding it so difficult? Again, that could well be ableist. That could well be a situation where you're making somebody feel like you are not even imagining what it could be like to have a different set of circumstances, which make it very difficult for them to do things that you can do easily. Another form of ableism, which has been really disturbing and deeply shadowy, and which I want to hold my hands up and tell you that I have myself fallen into, because I'm not doing this video from a position of superiority. I'm not trying to do this video from a position of saying, oh, everybody's doing this, that and the other, and I'm not doing any of it. I've definitely fallen into shadow. I have definitely fallen into judgment. I have definitely, dealt with this in ways that are less than glowing myself. And I want to tell you for the record that in the beginning, when COVID was first being discussed, I was one of those people who was reassured by the information that was being given that was telling me that it wasn't going to sweep me off. So basically the idea that it would only harm or kill those really who were elderly or who had pre-existing conditions that made them vulnerable. You know, there was a lot of that talk going around. A lot of that kind of talk was going around. And a lot of it was very well-meaning. It was people that were trying to reassure others, like, you know what, you're in the prime of life, you're in the prime of health, you're going to be okay. It's only going to be, the elderly and the people that are already compromised. And I was reassured by that. And that is fucked up. That is absolutely fucked up. So I'm not trying to say that it's not a time where we all can look at ourselves, myself included, and be like, wow, that's like a really self-interested, short-sighted way of thinking and feeling. And I forgive myself. But that's why it's so important when somebody faces you with your shadow, when somebody says something. And for me, the wake-up call was a tweet that somebody wrote that was like, hey, do you realize how screwed up it is that that's what we're saying? Do you realize how many people we're overlooking and how many people's relatives and loved ones we're overlooking when we say, oh, hey, it's only the old and infirm? Like, what? So it's beautiful to be called out and to be called in and to be shown the way that you're thinking and the way that you're feeling, and adjust it in accordance with your higher self, with what you know to be right in your spirit and in your soul, not just the egoic interest in self and how am I going to be and how am I going to cope, or the immediate people that are the closest to me, but thinking, how does this come across when I say it in front of others who might have very different situations? How would it be for me if my situation was very different? Let me think about that. If you've been experiencing a lot of anger towards individuals for different things, then we do need to think about anger as a type of energy, and I would encourage you to think about how that anger could be better used, or at least how a portion of it could be used differently. There are, without any shadow of a doubt, some people doing some dickhead things, all right? I'm not saying that isn't the case. I'm not saying that is not the case. There's definitely some people doing some dickhead things right now, flaunting the rules, being silly, putting other people at risk. I'm not saying that there isn't. This video is more intended to address assumptions that are being made around that might not be the case, and sometimes just really are not the case, and just encouraging me and encouraging you, encouraging everybody to get right with that fact, to get right with the fact that we make assumptions, we decide things, we fill in gaps, and actually sometimes the gaps that we fill in are filled in with our own shadowy fictions. And that's something that we just need to get a handle on. So I'm not saying people aren't doing some things that are very irritating and are going to, unfortunately, potentially cause risk to more of our civil liberties, because if people can't just follow some rules, and as much as possible follow those rules, if people are blatantly going to be like, the rules mean nothing to me, I'm going to have a birthday party for my 5-year-old child and I'm going to have people from different households come over, if those are the kinds of things that are going to be happening, then yes, it's going to be a problem for everybody and it's going to be a danger for a lot of people. I understand the anger, okay? But what I would say is that if you've got a lot of that anger towards individuals, if you're seeing things happen, if you're feeling angry about things that you know are wrong, but you're maybe also filling in a lot of gaps with things that you assume are wrong and you don't know the whole story, fine. Feel some of that anger, process some of that anger. But I would also remind you that anger is an energy. And I think that's something that is really important in shadow work for a lot of people, this idea that anger is an energy and that we can redirect our energy of anger into other areas where it can be better used, guys. And I think that's something that is so holy for me, is that the righteous indignation, the feeling of anger, can be used to shape systems and make big structural changes. And to say, never again will I be the kind of person who is a cog in this twisted machine. Never again will I do XYZ thing. Never again will I make this kind of mistake. Never again will I allow this system to get away with this thing. And for me, one of the main ways I've been feeling that is with the whole discussion around ableism and around how quickly so many companies have made it so easy for their entire workforce to work from home. Whereas previously, so many people who need to be able to work from home have been denied access to jobs because they've been told that there isn't the infrastructure for that, there aren't the facilities for that, there simply isn't the money for that. And yet, lo and behold, so many companies have moved so quickly and simply and easily to that structure. And another way that I feel like systems can change afterwards, and we can insist upon that change afterwards, is in terms of the amount of travel that is done, the amount of air travel, for instance. So many meetings that take place can take place over Skype. So many meetings that take place in person in any regard, and add extra financial stress, extra time pressure to the individual, and sometimes extra pollution and stress to Mother Earth. All of that can be eliminated. Look how much we can do on Zoom and Skype and etc, etc, etc. So COVID has brought to the fore these ways in which we can do things we insisted we couldn't do for people and for the planet. And that's interesting to me. That's something that I think I can direct my righteous indignation towards in some ways after this, rather than only direct it towards individuals whose entire story I actually don't know. In my notes for this video, I wrote, what about the energy of anger? If your anger is solely preserved for individuals you don't know who are flaunting rules or whom you feel may be flaunting the rules, fine, but what else could be done with that energy of anger? Is there any political action that you want to take with it? Is there a bigger conversation or form of organisation that you want to put towards it? Social inequality is becoming starkly obvious to those who were previously able to maintain ignorance of it. People in high rises and packed together in poorer neighbourhoods are at greater risk of infection. People who are not eligible for government money or have to wait far too long for it are at risk. The shit that you have to go through as a key worker on low pay is outrageous. The discussion around having to decide who lives and who dies due to inadequate money being spent on hospital equipment is a disgrace. If you're very angry with someone in front of you at the grocery store because they appear to have non-essential items in their basket, fine, but what else can you also direct a portion of that anger towards in order to see its maximum effect? I think it's really about asking ourselves, how do we not want to see things go back to normal after this? There's such a comfort for so many people in saying, oh, soon enough things will be back to normal. I think in the spiritual community, there's a lot of people who are like, normal wasn't working. I don't want to see things go back to normal. And I think it's great to be able to start at least thinking about the ways in which back to normal is not going to fly and we're not happy with it and it's not okay. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not going to be the right time for everybody to get into the nitty gritty of this discussion and start taking action. For a lot of people, it's going to be assessment in the aftermath of COVID-19, because at the moment there is really an urge towards survival and an urge towards the maintenance of emotional well-being. And I think we do need to recognize that. But look, if you are mobilized, if you're charged up, if you're angry, maybe think about how that anger can be best directed. That is all I'm saying. And that is a form of shadow work I think we can all do sometimes, COVID-19 or no COVID-19. I know I've had to do that shadow work many times myself. The final shadow that I want to talk about in this video that's related to COVID-19, or that I've seen be specifically prevalent during COVID-19, is shadows around marketing of wares and shadows around using COVID-19 as an opportunity to glean financial gain. Now, obviously, there are some services and there are some products that are very useful during the time of COVID-19, and people will be wanting to use those products and those services. They're going to need those things specifically because of COVID-19. And there's all kinds of different things, all kinds of different industries that are going to find that COVID-19 is in alignment with what it is that they offer. I know that because what I offer is one of those things. I offer spiritual counseling, I offer readings, I offer lots of products and services that are geared around well-being. So I understand that there are definitely going to be certain businesses, certain industries that are primed to help people on some level with their response to COVID-19. I get that. But the way that I've seen some of the marketing being done is specifically very shadowy. And that's been something that's really troubled me and worried me a lot. Of course, there are lots of industries and lots of businesses that don't necessarily offer a product or service that is directly connected to a need that would arise as the result of COVID-19, but they are opportunistically using COVID-19. And it's in a way that is very tasteless. It can be in a way that is very insensitive and very shadowy. So, that's something that I guess has just bothered me. There's nothing that I can really advise on it per se, aside from, don't feel pressured or urged towards purchasing anything that you feel has been marketed in a way that has made you feel demeaned or has made you feel more afraid. You don't have to put your money into supporting marketing that is making you feel even perhaps more unstable or more unhappy than you may already be feeling. You might notice that there are certain marketing tactics that are having really a negative effect on you. And I suppose my only advice in that area is unfollow, block, unsubscribe, right click and say, I don't want to see this advert, whatever it might be, whatever platform you're on, curate your experience as much as possible, because some of the marketing that's out there is toxic at this time. Now, am I saying that I think it's inappropriate to ever mention COVID-19 as part of your marketing? I mean, no, there are definitely going to be some services, some products, some industries, some businesses that will speak directly to what is going on with COVID-19, because their products and services were always geared towards a need that has to be met markedly during the time of COVID-19. But I think there's a way of doing it, and I think there's certainly a lot of opportunism and a lot of insensitivity and a lot of people not thinking about how the fuck they are wording things during this time. And I think the only thing that we can do as a sort of response to that is we can protect ourselves from it by making sure that we're not exposed to that marketing and that we do not feel that we need to buy into anything that is marketed in that way. One of the things that I've seen that I personally find to be opportunistic and in poor taste is people that have their own businesses, they are mentors or they're whatever they do, they work from home, they work online, okay? So they work online, they work in their own home. I've seen people saying things like, I'm so happy during the time of COVID-19 that I do what I do, and I can now sell you my package or my sessions or my whatever, so you too can do what I do. You can work from home and you can make sure that you are not affected during any future pandemics. There's lots of people saying things like, oh, I'm so glad that my business is pandemic proof. If you also want to learn how you can sell this product from home or be a mentor or be a consultant or whatever, then this is the way to go. It's like almost being gleeful about the fact that your money hasn't suffered, or at least that you are attempting to present the appearance that your money hasn't suffered anyway. And I find that to be really uncomfortable when there are so many people being laid off right now. There's a lot of gleeful delight that is doing the rounds in marketing about like, oh, I'm not suffering, I'm teaching yoga online, I'm doing this thing or that thing online. And now I've got this mentor program where you can learn to do this as well. And you can be like me, you can be rolling in dough while other people are really worried about where their next paycheck is going to come from. That to me is in really poor taste. And I think we can afford to recognize the negative impact that might be happening on us, and the way that's making us feel, and maybe also the way that is causing us to want to panic buy a program that will supposedly save us from this or get us out of whatever it is that we're in money wise. People that are using COVID-19 to try and get clients or customers to part from money in that way, they need to do some shadow work. That is shadowy right there. If you're a yoga teacher and you teach yoga classes online, can I recommend against saying something like, the upside of COVID-19 is that you have all the time in the world to perfect your asanas, and you can do that using this course or using this program or signing up with me for one-on-one, whatever. It's like, just, you know, there needs to be some thought put into how somebody is addressing the current situation in relation to something that they are selling. I really think that is needed. Another aspect of marketing that has been so tough and so fraught with shadow at this time is health claims. Health claims are coming out left and right. You know, these essential oils are antiviral, they're antibacterial, they're anti-COVID-19. You know what? If you are uncomfortable reporting somebody to the official body in your country when it comes to false claims and health claims, if you're uncomfortable doing that right away without warning the person first, wherever you see a health claim, private message that person and say, that is a health claim, it's unsubstantiated, it's not okay for you to sell your wares by making false health claims that have no evidence against them. If you don't stop, if you don't cease with this, I will be reporting you to the appropriate organization. Maybe that's something that you do feel like you want to do and that you do feel comfortable to do, because health claims can be so poisonous when it comes to this. People can be very opportunistic. They can want to convince you that their oil that they're selling or their thing that they're selling has properties that protect you against COVID-19. That kind of thing really needs to be addressed, and it's making people feel like they need to buy these products, and there are no scientific there's no scientific proof that those things work against COVID or that they help with anything, or any of that stuff. So health claims, definitely, that's been a shadow that I've seen as well. Also, whilst I'm on the topic of toxic marketing, can I just make a special mention to that video that Donald Trump just put out during a press conference, during a press meeting, whatever they call, press briefing, is that what they're called? Press briefing. He just put this ridiculous video out, which was like, it just makes him look like some kind of COVID-19 hero, and it's ridiculous, and it's definitely marketing. It's actually campaign marketing, and when that's happening on a political level in the highest office in the free world or whatever, you think to yourself, wow, this really goes all the way to the bone. These shadows roll mad deep, yo. My gosh, good God. Blimey. Flipping heck. Fiddlesticks. Darlings, I've really appreciated having the opportunity to talk about some of the shadows that I've seen related specifically to the pandemic and our responses to the pandemic. It's a very, very difficult time during which we should try to give each other as much compassion and understanding as possible, as well as, of course, doing the right thing and really feeling into what the right thing is. And I know that I'm speaking to a collection of different people with different experiences, with different thoughts and feelings. Please respectfully share those thoughts, feelings and experiences in the comments. I would love to know. I'd love to have conversations going. As always, I will be in there reading, being intrigued, being interested, feeling very fed and very nourished by the fact that this is a conversation and not just a monologue. This has been really interesting, and I would love to know what you guys think. You are not obligated in any way to agree with me. But please be aware that if you are going to harshly criticize me, or if you're going to take a policing tone with me, I am going to respond. I do think, and this is a shadow that I have seen pre-COVID-19, I do think that people sometimes believe that they can come along with a certain frame of mind, a certain difficulty that they're going through, a certain, bunch of difficult feelings that they're experiencing. And they can find somebody like me who predominantly makes sort of wellness and spirituality videos about the craft and stuff like that. And they can come at me with a certain tone, or they can and I'm making a separate video about this at some point. I've got notes on another video to do with this, so I'm not gonna touch on it for too long, but please be aware that if you're going to use me as a sticking post for your shadow in a way that I feel needs to be addressed because it contains misinformation about what I've said, or because your post contains misinformation that you're leveling towards me, I'm going to interact with you. I am not a guru sat on a cloud in the crown all the time, in the crown chakra, all the time, not interacting with the people who are addressing me. No, I interact, I respond to comments, I offer support, I offer advice. So if you feel that you can come at me with a certain very harsh, very policing tone, or if I feel like I need to correct you on something that you have misunderstood from what I said in my video, I'm going to respectfully, but definitely firmly and in an assertive, confident way, reply to you, because I'm an assertive, confident person. If you are not prepared for that, if you're not ready for that, then don't comment, because I do respond to various different kinds of comments. I don't just respond to comments which say, thank you, Kellyanne, this was so useful, like awesome content, great job. I also respond to criticism. I do respond to disagreement. I do, and I do that lovingly. But if you're going to come at me with a trolling tone, or if you're going to come at me saying I should be doing this, or I better make sure I do that, and I know that there is no expert evidence whatsoever, there's no expert testimony that tells me that I need to do that, I will respond to you and I will say as much, okay? And if you think that's bitchy, as one person accused me of being in my last video in the comments section, if you think that's bitchy, that's fine. I do not consider that to be bitchy, okay? I have the right of reply. I'm not just here to be a sticking post for Shadow. I'm not just here to allow people to misunderstand what I'm saying, or to give me information that is false and that is fear-mongering and say nothing in return because I'm too spiritual to say anything in return. That's not what spirituality means to me. I have the right of reply. When people are commenting, I'm assuming that they are up for some kind of interaction on some level. I may not interact, and there are plenty of people who have written things I disagree with in the comments with whom I have not interacted. But as you can imagine, like a lot of other people, I'm on lockdown and I may have time. So if I've got time, you may receive a response from me. Please do consider that before leaving any comments, because I'm not the type of person to just ignore all of my comments. I don't have time to respond to them all by any means, but I will respond to some of them. And you might not like the response you receive, because I'm a human being. I have my own opinions. I have my own brain. I'm here to have interactions. I'm here to be honest. I'm here to be human. I am human. And sometimes when I feel that I have been misunderstood or barked at, or I'm receiving orders from somebody who doesn't even have their facts straight, I'm going to assume the right of reply. So please, if you're not ready for that, if you're not in the space where you can handle that, don't leave a comment. I'm never ever going to name call. I'm never going to go ad hominem, I'm never going to do that. It's not what I do. But I have responded to some people that have had less than nice ways of addressing me or interacting with me. And that's something that, I would urge you to consider before you go ahead and comment something where you might have pent up anger or tension or stress or depression, whatever it might be. And you think of my comment section as being a perfect place to spew that without consequence. That's all I'm going to say. And darlings, I lovingly for now bid you adieu. So much love, blessed be. Mwah, stay safe.